The night was supposed to be quiet. Haven's Rest, a small town tucked away in the deep south, had spent generations surviving in the shadows, a haven carved out by black families who had refused to be erased by time or hate. The air was thick with the scent of magnolia and smoked barbecue, the streets lined with porch lights glowing softly against the darkness. And then the trucks came. Engines roared like thunder. Headlights cut through the night like a hunter's gaze. The Blooded Sons, a gang of men who saw the town's very existence as an insult, had arrived. 30 of them, armed, confident, certain that tonight would be like the many nights before when towns like this had been burned to the ground, wiped from history. Their people left with nothing but ash and fear. But Haven's Rest wasn't defenseless. They didn't know the 4 men waiting in the shadows. Marcus Kane had been a ghost long before he returned home, a Navy SEAL with more missions behind enemy lines than he could count. He had spent years spilling blood in deserts and jungles, his name whispered in places where death was currency. When he came back to Haven's Rest, he thought he was leaving war behind. Darius Hayes had never missed a shot that mattered, a sniper with an unshakable gaze. His hands were steady even when his heart wasn't. War had shaped him, but he had chosen to come back to Haven's Rest, hoping for something that wasn't written in gunpowder and blood. Leon Carter was a demolitions expert, a man who turned arrogance into tombs. He knew how to destroy, but more importantly, he knew how to defend. Haven's Rest was the only place that had ever felt like home, and he would see it turn to rubble before he let another man take it. Samuel Evans had seen more blood than any man should. A medic by training, a fighter by necessity. He had spent years patching up men who didn't always make a home. Tonight, he wasn't here to heal. He was here to make sure that the people he loved didn't bleed. The 4 men stood at the edge of the town, watching as the convoy rolled in, dust rising behind them like a storm. They had been waiting for this. The Blooded Sons thought they were the predators. They had no idea they had just walked into a war zone. The trucks came to a slow stop in the middle of town. The men stepped out, rifles slung over shoulders, torches in hand. Their leader, a man with a scar running down his cheek and a Confederate flag stitched onto his vest, grinned. "Burn it all," he said. Marcus didn't hesitate. The first shot rang out like a whisper in the night, silent and deadly. A man dropped before he even knew he was being hunted. Panic. The Blooded Sons turned, searching for the source, their confidence cracking. Then the second shot came. Another man down. And then the town came alive. Explosions ripped through the street, Leon's handiwork sending debris flying. Darius moved like a shadow, picking off targets with surgical precision. Samuel was already on the ground, moving between buildings, cutting them off before they could retreat. Marcus stepped out from the darkness, his rifle lowered, his eyes cold. The leader of the Blooded Sons locked eyes with him, and for the first time he looked uncertain. "Welcome to Haven's Rest," Marcus said. "You're not leaving." The night air was thick with gunpowder and blood. The Blooded Sons had come expecting easy prey. What they got was a lesson in war. The first wave had crumbled fast. Marcus, Darius, Leon, and Samuel moved like ghosts through the town, striking with lethal precision. Explosions had cut off the gang's retreat, their trucks now nothing but twisted metal burning against the night. But the fight wasn't over. Through the smoke and wreckage, the gang regrouped, their numbers still strong. A second wave came crashing in, more coordinated, more aggressive. The Blooded Sons had finally realized what they were up against, and now they were ready to kill. Marcus ducked behind a shattered wall, his heart steady despite the chaos. A burst of automatic gunfire tore through the wooden beams inches from his head. "Looks like they're learning," Darius muttered through the radio. "Not fast enough," Marcus replied, reloading his rifle. He peered around the corner and spotted movement. 2 men sweeping the street with rifles, another setting up what looked like a makeshift Molotov. They were trying to burn the town down. Not tonight. Marcus fired. The man with the Molotov barely had time to register the shot before his body crumpled, the glass bottle shattering harmlessly to the ground. Darius' rifle cracked next, and another man collapsed, his lifeless body folding against the pavement. But the Blooded Sons weren't breaking. If anything, they were getting angrier. And that's when the real nightmare began. A deafening explosion rocked the outskirts of Haven's Rest. not Leon's explosives. Marcus' stomach twisted. What the hell was that? The radio crackled. They're hitting the houses. Samuel's voice was tight with fury. They're not just here for the fight, Marcus. They're taking people. For the first time that night, a different kind of fear crept in. The Blooded Sons had come prepared, not just with fire and bullets, but with a plan. They weren't just trying to kill. They were here to erase. Marcus turned toward the houses at the edge of town, just in time to see figures being dragged into the back of pickup trucks. Women, children, the elders who had built this town with their bare hands. This wasn't just a fight anymore. This was war. Leon's voice cut through the radio. We have to move. Now! Marcus sprinted toward the outskirts, weaving through debris and gunfire. He could see the trucks now, their engines revving as they tried to make their escape. Samuel was already there, fighting like a man possessed. A Blooded Son lunged at him with a knife, but Samuel ducked, caught his arm, and slammed him against the truck door hard enough to crack bone. But there were too many of them. Marcus raised his rifle, lined up a shot, and then he saw him, the leader of the Blooded Sons. He stood beside one of the trucks, a smirk curling his lips as he shoved a bound and gagged man into the back. An older man, Reverend Elijah Brooks, the town's heart and soul. Marcus' finger tightened on the trigger. But before he could fire, the leader grabbed a woman from the crowd and pressed a gun to her head. "Drop it, Cain," he shouted. The world went still. Marcus' heartbeat pounded in his ears. His finger hovered over the trigger, but he knew one wrong move, and she was dead. Darius, Leon, and Samuel were all in position, weapons raised. The Blooded Sons were outnumbered now. Their forces cut in half, but they still had leverage. "Let them go," Marcus growled. The leader chuckled. "You think you're in charge here? That's cute." He pressed the barrel harder against the woman's skull. "Here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna drop your guns, you're gonna let us leave, and maybe, just maybe, I don't start putting bullets in their heads." Marcus clenched his jaw. The rage inside him burned hot, but he didn't move, because he knew this was a battle of patience. The Blooded Sons thought they were still in control. They had no idea what was coming next. A single gunshot cracked through the night. The leader staggered back, his weapon dropping from his grasp. Blood spread across his shoulder, his grip on the hostage loosening. Darius had taken the shot. Chaos exploded. Marcus lunged forward, his knife flashing in the moonlight. The leader barely had time to react before Marcus drove the blade into his thigh, twisting hard. The Blooded Sons panicked. Some tried to fire. Others scrambled to get back into their trucks. Leon and Samuel were already moving. Leon tossed an explosive under the lead truck. Just a small charge, but enough to send a message. The explosion rocked the ground, sending gang members sprawling. Samuel moved through the chaos, cutting restraints, pulling hostages free. Darius fired again. Another enemy down. The Blooded Sons were crumbling. Marcus turned back to the leader, who was writhing in pain, blood pooling beneath him. "You made a mistake coming here," Marcus said, his voice low, dangerous. The leader spat blood, his eyes burning with hate. "You think this is over?" He laughed, shaking his head. "You don't know who we are. You don't know who's coming next." Marcus grabbed him by the collar, dragging him closer. Then, "Tell me." The leader smirked. "I hope you're ready, Cain, because you just started a war you can't win." Marcus held his gaze for a long moment. Then he let go, letting the man slump to the ground, broken and bleeding. It didn't matter what came next, because tonight, Haven's Rest had won, and the Blooded Sons would never forget it. The town was silent. The fires had burned down to embers. The bodies of the Blooded Sons lay scattered across the streets. Haven's Rest had survived, but the war wasn't over. Marcus, Darius, Leon, and Samuel stood in the town square, looking at what remained. "We should leave the bodies where they are," Leon muttered. "Let them serve as a warning." Darius exhaled, rubbing his jaw. "They'll come back." Marcus nodded. "Yeah, they will." Samuel looked toward the townspeople, who were watching them with a mixture of exhaustion and quiet determination. They had fought back. They had won. But the fight wasn't over. Marcus turned back toward the road, where the blooded sons had fled into the night. Somewhere, out there, more were coming. And next time, they wouldn't just bring torches and rifles. They would bring war. Marcus clenched his fists, his gaze hard. Then we'll be ready